Alright, everybody, welcome back to the channel. I am Fleet Admiral Diaz, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, before anything, let's talk Section 31. This shadowy organization predates the Federation, as evidenced by Lieutenant Malcolm Reed and his unwilling involvement in their operations, as far back as the 2150s. After that, not counting the Kelvinverse, where RoboCop seemed happy to talk about them openly, they were basically left unheard of until the time of the Dominion War. Now, that's the 2370s, which makes it about 200 years where they remained under the radar, conducting covert actions. Now, you do not maintain 2 centuries of deep cover and secrecy by operating right out in the open. And it's also worthy of mention that their recruiting methods are a bit unorthodox, yet effective. They don't really seek out and employ ready-made super spies from a group like Starfleet Intelligence. And that's because Starfleet has to follow rules, even in their nominally clandestine operations. Intelligence personnel seem inclined to laugh off the very existence of Section 31, or they might be on some sort of crusade to expose and wipe them out. So, Section 31 steers clear of them, and is content to let the official intel people explain or take responsibility for their activities. This group likes to look up people with a certain psychological profile and set of abilities who can serve as an asset. Now, this has parallels to real-world spycraft employed by organizations such as the CIA, KGB, and others, wherein the more experienced and senior agents will act as handlers for people who have access or knowledge but aren't necessarily trained operatives. Usually, these exchanges revolve around monetary compensation, though there are other methods of subversion, such as ideological or psychological. Typically, any of these end when the operation does. However, every once in a while, handlers will latch on to someone who has either acted as an asset in the past or seems like a good prospect to train as an agent. Granted, there are people who join in an above-board fashion and may or may not touch the kind of covert ops we're talking about. They might simply be analysts. They might compile gathered intelligence, give briefings, or conduct any sort of clerical duties. I'm talking about groups that are rarely discussed, such as Special Activities Division and the like. And they are rumored to draw their numbers from any number of shady, less than savory sources. Such was the case for Section 31 when it came to people like Reed or Dr. Bashir. We can surmise that they appealed to Reed's sense of duty and patriotism, while Bashir was roped in by all of his intrigue for spy holonovels and actual former spies such as Aylin Garrick. Neither of these men wanted to actually be a spy and subvert the trust and confidence of their peers and superiors, or betray the ideals of Starfleet and the Federation. They were manipulated into doing so. In Bashir's case, he actually served Section 31's purpose by trying to betray his handler, Luther Sloan, so that a Federation sympathetic official could rise to higher office on Romulus. This was all part of a carefully crafted and subtle long game meant to keep the Romulans from continuing to soften toward or even ally with the Dominion, and it involved more than just Bashir. Admiral Ross facilitated and implicitly assisted this action to take place, all for the greater good. Speaking of Admiral Ross, even his wartime adjutant, Benjamin Sisko, who often served as more of a commodore than mere captain, had zero knowledge of this organization beyond the rumors stirred up when they approached Bashir, and they wanted it this way. They only ever superficially exposed their existence because it was vital to the survival of the Federation to otherwise keep it secret, and their entire purpose in life is to safeguard the Federation and its citizens by whatever means necessary. Cue Discovery, where they operate in the light of day and take direct action. In addition, they recruit and grant autonomy to people like the former Terran Empress Giorgio. Yes, I said Empress. I refuse to call a woman Emperor because this nonsense, gender-neutral title really annoys me. There's precedent for a female Terran leader to be called Empress, i.e. when Mirror Hoshi assassinated her Captain Archer, commandeered the USS Defiant, and showed up at Earth to install herself as Empress Sato. The only reason this not-so-subtle distinction was made in last season's Mirror arc was to make sure that Giorgio filled the slot of a strong, independent despot who don't need no man. But I digress. Realistically, Someone like her would have been thrown into the 23rd century of a black site and had a gradual drip of added creature comforts and freedoms meted out to her in exchange for information and consultation. She would not ever, under any circumstances, be given carte blanche to muck around like she's back in Tomorrow Never Dies all over again. Literally, the only logical outcome I can see from her very existence as a Section 31 asset is that since the mirror universe has some technological edge over ours, due to the fact that the Defiant was a 23rd century starship and was introduced into their 22nd century, she might be marginally responsible for Section 31's panache when it comes to getting in and out of places undetected or other feats which befuddle regular Starfleet. Okay, now, moving on to the episode. Okay, so cute idea with having L'Rell say, previously on Star Trek Discovery in Klingon. One problem, it reminds the audience of the mush-mouthed orcs which pass for Klingons on this show. After that is a recap about Ash Tyler / Voq and his weird relationship with Space Sasha. Supposedly this episode is going to provide insight into the more human-ish Klingons of the TOS era, even though Enterprise explained that too. They revisit the Klingon boobs, which I will not screen cap here because, ew. They also reiterate the bomb inside Kronos as being L'Rell's means of securing and holding power over the Klingons. Cut to Burnham using yet more hollow technology that isn't exactly period appropriate, and bemoaning her lack of understanding where the red lights are concerned, as well as her relationship with her brother Spock. Then she almost gets run over by a marathon of trainees, including Tilly. And then Tilly is the focus, by way of her seeing that invisible dead friend of hers from the last episode and thinking she's nuts. Despite all that, Tilly still wins the half marathon by catching up after arguing with her junior high chum and passing the rest of the group. Good on her. Saru congratulates her, and so does the dead girl. Honestly, as tiresome as this subplot is, like something that would have been best left in the background and revisited later, it is a nice respite from the Kling orc stuff we know is coming later. Of course, Burnham has to put in an appearance for Tilly to credit her for all that training she put her through. What, the one time last season they showed them jogging around the ship? On the bridge, it's yellow alert because someone is closing in on the ship and not responding to hails, which prompts Pike to order they be warned that further approach without identification will mean Discovery activates their tactical systems. The ship is a diplomatic one, and Burnham recognizes it as Sarek's. She figures he must have more information on the signals, but Pike interjects that it might have to do with Spock. Oh boy. Instead of Sarek, Amanda beams over and hugs Michael. Aww. Adoptive not-mom cryptically whispers that they have to help Spock. After the credits roll, I guess we're on Kronos to L'Rell giving a speech, and she is apparently the Chancellor with the very human-looking Voq, showing off the D7 battlecruiser, which is supposed to be the hallmark of a unified Klingon fleet. Well, at least one of the council is not pleased with all of this, and he mocks as well as challenges L'Rell and her plaything, while also theorizing that the red lights are an omen against her being in power. Ash stands up and white knights for her by rubbing the paint off the old Klingon's face as L'Rell ordered. Amanda basically asks Sasha to break into Spock's medical file, which she stole when she went to Starbase 5, breaking the law. After that, there's an attempt at political intrigue among the houses of Kronos. Instead, we get Ash/Voq whining about not being spoken to in Klingon and treated as a Klingon, and then L'Rell making out with him. Ugh. And then he offends her by saying that her touch feels like violation. Well, yeah, those nasty Klingon boobs are not pleasant to think about. Back on the ship, Burnham and Amanda try to press Pike to open the file, instead of Mary Sue Burnham just cracking it like she was asked. When Sasha starts playing Barrick's lawyer to convince the captain on some precedent in case law, we get some of that residual annoying band bossy nonsense thrown at Pike by Amanda, who says bossiness is called persistence on Vulcan. Whatever. Instead of just doing that, he calls up the captain at Starbase 5, who throws some Spanish into regular conversation. Now, being Hispanic myself, this kind of grated on me a bit, but far less than when he informs Pike that Spock busted out and killed 3 doctors. Now, the 3 of them agree that this is bull, and Pike orders Sasha to hack into the file. This runaround is very weird, but I can somewhat appreciate the fact that she brought this to him instead of just doing it on her own. I can't fault that, at least. I totally expected her to just crack the file without even consulting Pike. Now, when they go to watch Spock's file, it bothers Amanda. Seems to indicate that he is emotionally compromised. There's some musings and attempts to play logical on Burnham's part, but it's all really just talk for the sake of talk. And it gets ridiculous when Amanda theorizes Spock went psycho because of his mixed upbringing and her supposedly not being allowed to show affection to her son. All of this seems quite forced, to be honest. And then there's the twist that Spock saw and drew the Red Angel as a boy, according to Amanda. Man, does this mean that this actually is some other screwed up timeline? I sure hope so. After that, there's a holographic Skype call between Tyler and Sasha, where he warns her that L'Rell's position might be shaky. She says she likes the beard, and then there's this silly bit about the Klingons growing their hair again after the war. Yes, the argument has been made that the Klingons supposedly shave their heads and whatnot when at war to honor Kahless. Except Kahless cut off a lock of his hair to forge the first bat'leth, not all of it. And apparently Gowron missed the memo on this head shaving during the Klingon Civil War, their campaign against Cardassia, their renewed hostilities against the Federation, and then the Dominion War. This is weak-ass retcon at its finest. Sappy dialogue about how L'Rell is having trouble being in charge in a man's world and needs Tyler ensues. The way this scene was shot in places really reminded me of those goofy Force Skype calls between Rey and Krylo in The Last Jedi, just as an aside. After that, we've got cadets shadowing senior officers. Tilly is over with Pike for some reason, while having her annoying ghost friend still following her around, talking the whole time and sending her into a nervous breakdown. There's some weird crazy outburst from Ghost May about the captain having to be shorter and whiter, as opposed to Pike. And this follows Pike cracking a joke about one of his duties being to marry people. Tilly sits in the chair and flips out in front of everybody because Dead Girl won't stop badgering her, and what the hell are those guys? Anyway, she quits from the command training program when everyone stares at her like she's nuts, and she gets followed into the turbo lift by the ghost. Meanwhile, Man Bun is on Kronos, rubbing at his fingers really hard like he's trying to take his prints off. He sees someone and follows them around, then ends up threatening one of his in-laws with a blade, and learns he's a daddy. That messes him up, and then L'Rell explains that the baby came about through some weird ex-utero nonsense, which explains why she didn't have a belly in Season 1, I guess. L'Rell then gets all jealous because Ash called Burnham earlier. Jeez, this is some high school love triangle tier material. Well, the baby being an albino strikes something in Tyler, and we get this reiteration that fair skin is a stigma among Klingons. A not-so-subtle jab at perceived racism in today's world, Anyway, he devotes himself to L'Rell and doesn't shrink away like a rape victim when she touches him this time. Progress. Anyway, there's a conversation between Amanda and Sasha. So basically what happened here is they stole some elements of Spock's childhood and grafted them onto Burnham's. She once tried to run away due to feeling she didn't belong, and the so-called logic extremists trying to kill her at some point, only for Sarek to go get her because Spock told him where she was, thanks to the Red Angel telling him. A lot to unpack here. The logic extremists is another element that would have been best left buried in Season 1. Xenophobic Vulcans who shed their pacifist ways in order to suicide bomb and otherwise levy war against their own government sounds way too much like the Terra Prime movement from Enterprise. Anyway, Burnham semi-confesses to doing something bad enough to Spock that he would withdraw from her, and then others, to try and protect him from the extremists. This not only makes little to no sense, it also plays into that fan theory about these two doing something nasty way back when. Ugh. There's a very forced kiss from Amanda to Sasha, and then Amanda storms off, determined to find Spock herself, apparently. Anyway, L'Rell and Ash find her uncle hanged in the nursery, and Grandpa Klingon, the one who Tyler made into his bitch earlier, shows up as a hologram when they realize the baby was kidnapped. There's some threats exchanged, and then they learn that the face paint Ash has been trying to rub off his fingers has somehow allowed Grandpa Klingon to eavesdrop on them. And fat, no doubt. Seemed more like a Romulan tactic, honestly. So he has dirt on them from overhearing their sappy conversations and offers to turn the kid over if they'll flee the homeworld and leave him in charge. Anyway, on to the next scene. Why the heck are Tilly and Burnham still sharing quarters? This would be like having a second lieutenant and a lieutenant colonel as bunkmates. In any case, Tilly confides in Burnham about the ghost and how it's wearing her down, and she breaks down crying. Of course, Burnham figures out that the dead girl is something alien and external, and that they need to go to Stamets for help. Well, joy. And what we have here is a poorly choreographed blade fight scene between L'Rell and her boy toy and Grandpa Klingon and his cronies. This reminds me of something, too, but I just can't put my finger on it. The whole fight is for naught when Grandpa zaps and paralyzes the two of them and forces L'Rell to thumbprint and sign away her authority as Chancellor. This guy really is more like a Romulan than a Klingon. I think the writers got their races mixed up. I mean, they don't care about canon, so why not just have the Roms in the show at this point? So, before Gramps can slit Tyler's throat and save us from his whinging, a cloaked space Hitler appears, one-shots all of the old man's thugs with little drones, then banishes Gramps to the Phantom Zone or some shit, so L'Rell can just stab him while he's floating there. This is all in service of keeping L'Rell in power because the peace will hold. Giorgio plays at being a security consultant for Starfleet and not the former Terran Empress. Anyway, she wants L'Rell to get rid of Man Bun and his baby, but the Chancellor isn't having it. Back on Discovery, Saru assures Tilly once again that she won't be drummed out of the command program despite snapping at Pike like a crazy person. Then her ghost reappears when Stamets comes over and injects her with something because apparently Stamets is the one she wanted to see the whole time. Anyway, she's apparently just a manifestation of a eukaryote, which apparently hitched a ride on Tilly when they left the Mirror Universe. Then Stamets pulls me out with the same doohickey Tilly used on the asteroid, and we get a gray Slimer blob in a force field. Gross. Anyway, L'Rell spins a BS story about how she killed Tyler for being a spy and killing her child. She presents some fake heads to support it, and says that Grandpa Klingon died protecting her from assassination. Then there's yet more Game of Thrones ripoff to ensue by her insisting that the Klingons call her Mother instead of Chancellor. And of course, Tyler and the kid are actually alive and with Giorgio on some goofy Section 31 ship, followed by Tyler giving the baby up to become a monk on Borath. Apparently, Giorgio recruits Tyler to her Black Badge Misfit Brigade of not Section 31, and this is supposed to be the setup for a spin-off that, hopefully, never happens. Just a few closing thoughts here. This episode was a hot mess, just really all over the place. By all accounts, this show is in trouble, or at the very least in need of a full-court press in terms of promotion to bring eyeballs and, more importantly, subscriptions to CBS All Access. Yet here they are, seemingly setting up for a spin-off. Pro tip: you don't try to do that until the initial series is a success. Even then, it has a way of backfiring. Take the example of Supernatural. They tried to set up a series based on that after several seasons of the original running on the CW. It was going to be called Supernatural Bloodlines, and frankly, I think it looked and sounded fascinating, as it would have taken place in Chicago and dealt with monsters organized into crime family-like groups, blending in with humans and occasionally warring with each other. That fell through because of the lackluster reception to the Pitch episode. They tried it again years later with a girl power spinoff called Wayward Sisters. Now this one I'm actually grateful didn't get the green light, because even though I liked the characters that would have been in it individually, it just didn't jive as its own series. Now I say all this to say Discovery is not exactly resting on green pastures right now, and they're already trying to act as if they have some MCU-style blank check to just pump out all kinds of crap. But to what audience? The Drekkies and the sock accounts propping up scores on a few sites. The shills over at TV Guide or comicbook.com or Sci-Fi Wire. That's not sustainable. And I'm afraid Star Trek is going to end up locked in the vault again for a very, very long time. Possibly forever, unless someone passionate about the franchise winds up in a position of authority and cleans house with all of these identity politicking hacks like Kurtzman. Anyway, that's my take. I'd like to hear yours. And, of course, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and drop me a like, subscribe, and come on back to the channel. You have a wonderful